Have you ever wondered how we actually tackle a massive planet-sized problem like climate change? I mean, how does a big international meeting and a piece of paper signed by world leaders translate into real action on the ground? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're going to trace the entire path of climate policy, from the world stage all the way down to a single nation's playbook.
But first, let's start with ground zero. Every single policy we're about to talk about is designed to deal with one thing: global warming. At its core, it's the rise in the planet's temperature, and it's happening because of us, because of human activities. And that simple fact, right there, that's the whole reason we're having this conversation. So here's our game plan. First up, we'll define the challenge, just like scientists do. Then, we'll look at the world's very first rulebook for climate action, see how that evolved into a brand new global pact, and then bring it all home by following Turkey's specific climate journey and its national action plan. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, defining the challenge. Because before you can write any rules or sign any treaties, you've got to know exactly what you're up against. You have to let the science frame the problem.
So, this is the official definition from the big one, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC. Now, the magic words here are attributed to human activity. This is the line in the sand. It's what legally and scientifically separates what we're doing to the atmosphere from the planet's own natural cycles. And that distinction is the foundation for all international action. And what we're trying to protect is just incredibly complex. You see, the climate isn't just the air. It's this intricate dance between the atmosphere, the oceans, the ice caps, the land, and, well, all of us, all life on Earth. When you mess with one part, it sends ripples through the entire system. And that's what makes creating a global policy so unbelievably difficult.
And this quote from the IPCC, the UN's top climate science group, it really just hits you. We are not talking about normal weather fluctuations here. The changes we have seen since 1950 in just a single human lifetime are completely off the charts compared to the last 1,000 years. That's the kind of scientific alarm bell that forces world leaders to finally sit up and pay attention.
Okay, so the science is clear, it's urgent. So how did the world respond? That brings us to Section 2, the story of how nations tried to create the very first global rulebook for climate action. This timeline lays it out perfectly. It all kicks off in 1992 with the Foundational Agreement. Just 5 years later, in 1997, you get the Kyoto Protocol, the first real attempt at legally binding targets. And then, a huge leap forward to 2015 brings us the modern framework we're all living with now, the Paris Agreement. You can see the whole evolution of global ambition right here. So that first one, the UNFCCC, it's basically the constitution for all climate action. Think of it like that. It didn't tell countries exactly how much to cut, but it set the stage. It laid out the main goal, the principles, and the process for how everyone was going to work together.
Okay, and this next part is maybe one of the most important concepts in all of climate politics. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know. Common but differentiated responsibilities. But all it really means is, hey, we are all in this mess together, but let's be honest, some countries have been pumping out emissions for a lot longer and got rich doing it. So this principle says those developed nations have a greater responsibility to lead the charge.
And that's where the Kyoto Protocol came in. This was the first real attempt to give the UNFCCC some bite. It was a top-down deal, assigning strict, legally binding emission targets to industrialized countries. It was a huge step for sure, but it also created some tension because it didn't really put obligations on developing nations, which set the stage for a new way of thinking.
And all those lessons learned from Kyoto, they paved the way for the modern era of climate action. This is where we get a new global pact, one that was a total game changer.
And this number, well, it says it all really, 193. That's how many parties had formally joined the Paris Agreement as of early 2022. We're talking about pretty much the entire planet agreeing that yes, we all need to do something. It was an incredible moment of global unity.
So, what did everyone agree to? The goals are massive. Keep warming well below 2 degrees, but really push to limit it to 1.5. But here's the genius of it, the big change from Kyoto. It's a bottom-up approach. Instead of targets being handed down from on high, every single country gets to set its own goals. And it's about more than just cutting emissions. It's about helping countries adapt and, crucially, shifting all that global money towards a greener future.
All right, so that's the big picture, the global stage. Now let's zoom right in and use Turkey as a case study to see how a single nation finds its place within this huge, complex framework.
Turkey's story here is really interesting because its position has always been kind of unique. As a member of the OECD, that's a club of mostly high-income economies, it was originally put in two groups, Annex I, meaning it had to cut emissions, and Annex II, meaning it had to help pay for other countries' efforts. But in 2001, the world recognized its special circumstances and took it out of Annex II. What did that mean? It still had a duty to act, but it didn't have to chip in financially to help other nations.
And you can see its journey right here. It's a story of gradual, steady engagement. After that status change, Turkey officially jumped into the UNFCCC in 2004. Then came the Kyoto Protocol in 2009. And finally, after years of negotiations, it ratified the big one, the Paris Agreement, in 2021, signaling a major recommitment to the global fight.
All right, so this brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle. How do you take a promise made in Paris and turn it into real change back home? That's what this last section is all about, the National Action Plan.
And if you look at Turkey's national development plans, you can literally watch this idea take root and grow. Back in the early 2000s, climate change was just a quick mention. A few years later, they started writing actual strategy papers. Fast forward to the most recent plan, and boom, the goal is a full-on low-carbon development model. Climate change went from being on the sidelines to being a core part of the economic game plan.
And this is a big but. Here's the reality check, coming straight from their own plan. It's one thing to have great environmental laws on paper. It's a whole other challenge to actually make them work. This is that classic gap between having a plan and making the plan happen.
And the country's official strategy really doubles down on this new way of thinking. The goal is to stop treating climate policy and economic policy as two separate things. It's about weaving them together, integrating them, so the country can be a more effective player in this global fight.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. The plan zeroes in on 5 key areas where the country is most vulnerable. And we're not talking about abstract ideas here. We're talking about the absolute essentials: our water, our food, our natural ecosystems, our safety from disasters, and of course, our health. This is what makes the whole climate issue hit home.
So there you have it. We've gone all the way from a global pact in Paris down to a concrete national plan. The roadmaps are there, the vulnerable areas are identified, and that leaves us with the big, lingering question, not just for Turkey, but for every country. With these strategies in place, is anyone really prepared for the climate future?